Just reading the highway code and drinking out of my RiderCamTV mug.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. And you've got your RiderCamTV top on.
Yeah.
Wow. Anyway,
welcome to another video with RiderCamTV.
Who reads that?
We read it.
Oh yes, I get that.
Anyway, what we thought we'd do today is have a look at the changes to the highway code that came into effect. You will be watching this on the Sunday, so it would have come in yesterday.
Obviously, for people who aren't living in the UK, these rules won't affect you.
No, it won't.
You hadn't thought that, had you?
No, this is the official highway code that we have been studiously reading today. But you'll see that there's, in the news, there's a whole plethora, especially on social media.
Plethora, an overabundance.
Yeah, an overabundance of people just consistently talking about the changes in the highway code and getting really, really het up about all of them.
Very het up.
Whereas they're actually quite simple. I don't think we agree with all of them, but we'll go through them. But the whole premise around the highway code that has always been there is to look after other road users that are using the road at the same time, isn't it? That's the whole reason about highway code. So we've got the Road Traffic Act, which applies to a lot of the things in the highway code, but the highway code isn't a law. It's a should do, could do,
should, would, could.
Rules of the road. Look after other people. This is what you should do when you're using the road. There are certain bits in the highway code where you see things like you must do this, you must not do that. That applies to certain parts of the Road Traffic Act. But other parts are just telling you how to be a little bit courteous on the road to other road users. And I think that's something that has been lost in the deluge of time.
Deluge of time? Does
Yeah.
that even make sense?
Because you've got people on bikes screaming at people, you've got people in cars screaming at people, you've got people saying, I've got that on camera, you shouldn't have done that. Shouting and swearing at people, not giving anybody right away, not giving credence to other people, not giving respect to other people. So I think what a lot of the changes here do is just highlight some of the changes to make it right for some of those more vulnerable road users, to make sure that we're all looking out for everyone, don't you?
Part of the problem in the UK, without getting political, is the fact that our police force has been reduced, so there's not as many policemen around on the roads handing out tickets and things like that. Then we've had this massive lockdown that's been going on and off, on and off, on and off. And we did a video on, remember I did 2 videos on the blood bikes about how, first one was how quiet the roads were and how, you could practice all your things. And the next one was how as soon as the lockdown had been eased, people were back in their cars, but they hadn't done any extra training, any extra practice, take it steady for a while. I haven't driven my car for 6 months or whatever, 4 months. Suddenly they're back on the roads, and it seems like everybody's forgot the rules.
Yeah.
In all sorts of cases. I mean, I spend a lot of time driving trucks, obviously bikes and cars, so I've got 3 heads. And driving a motorcycle and a truck are exactly the same because you have to plan everything. But the number of cars we've got on the road now is massive, and the amount of rules that have been broken. I mean, I'm not going to be puritanical about it. Everyone breaks rules, unfortunately. But the standard of driving has definitely dropped. And I think this in the UK is a response to that.
Yeah, and I think you're 100% right. So we're not knocking any of the driving instructors out there, no matter what you instruct in, but there seems to be a chain of events, doesn't there? So rather than passing people to, and presumably it's gone on for the history of time. So if you imagine a motorcycle test 20 years ago, lots of people say they got on a bike, man or woman was stood there examining with a clipboard on a pavement, you had to ride round the block, they couldn't see half of it, they stepped out in the road, made sure that you could stop in time. Yes, you've passed, no, you've failed. So what we're actually doing as a society of people is training people to pass a test, as opposed to training people to plan for what's happening on the road and drive safely. Does that make sense? I'm not knocking anything that they're...
That's the motorcycle test. The car test in the UK now is about 35 minutes long. And in that they have to do, I think it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes of navigation on a GPS or a sat-nav. They don't do parallel parking anymore. They have to either drive into a parking space as you would find in a supermarket or reverse into one, and it can be either one of those. But the amount of people who can't reverse cars now is frightening, you know. It's just like, my God, you know.
Yeah.
And 35 minutes for a test is nothing. Then when you get onto your HGV test, you know, driving trucks and things, there are 2 tests, but they're both exactly the same. One is for rigid trucks and one is for articulated trucks. I think now the laws have changed. You can go straight to an Arctic, but you used to have to do your rigid first, then your Arctic. That's an hour and a half long.
Wow.
And it involves reversing around a chicane thing, as it's simulating reversing into bays and things like that, you know. And then if you wanted to tow a caravan up until a few months ago, you had to do another test, which is exactly the same as the HGV test. So even though you might have been driving 30 years, you'd never towed a caravan or a trailer, you then had to go and do a test, which was an hour and a half long.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's really skewed. So I think this is responding to all the issues that are happening, because I've gone through the rules looking at this, and I don't see any changes that affect me as drastically as people say they should, because
No.
I have to do that anyway on a bike and a truck.
So overall, where we're looking at this from is normal drivers and riders and pedestrians, and looking at what we do within ROSPA and the highway code and all of that sort of stuff as tutors. This really hasn't changed anything that we would do, because we always plan for those hazards. We plan for people that might be crossing junctions anyway. And we also plan for what's happening behind us in the hope that people have seen us and seen what we're doing. So it just heightens the fact that what we're planning for is more important than ever before, isn't it? But we've got some changes that we need to look at. So the first one is the hierarchy of road users, isn't it?
What we're using here is the
Government site.
the UK government's website on 8 things you need to know about the changes in the highway code. And so the first part is the hierarchy of users.
So I think we can sum this up in a few words. They've got loads of words on there. So they're saying the hierarchy places those road users most at risk in the event of a collision at the top of the hierarchy. It doesn't remove the need for everyone to behave responsibly, and it's important that all road users are aware of the highway code, consider it to other road users, and understand their responsibility for the safety of others. So really nothing's changed there.
No.
Because we should all understand what's in the highway code, and I bet your bottom dollar 70% of drivers, riders and pedestrians and cyclists don't know what's in the highway code, because they've done their test ages ago,
Never read it.
kind of just get used to the conditions that they're driving to, don't actually know all the intricacies of the highway code. And that's as important for you as it is for me, as it is for Mark and anybody else on the road. But I reckon you can sum this up into a couple of words. Light is right. If you think light is right...
Where's you just got that from?
I just like, ting, but, you know...
It works.
Yeah, so if you're a pedestrian, you're lighter than a motorbike. Bicycle. Who's lighter than a motorbike, who's lighter than a car, who's lighter than a truck, who's lighter than a lorry. So the hierarchy goes from the most vulnerable road users. So all of those people that are likely to cause more damage to the lesser or the more vulnerable should be looking out for the more vulnerable.
So that's the bone of contention, because people are going, oh, you know, cyclists, they're maniacs, they're drivers. Yeah, there are some really bad cyclists, there's some bad motorcyclists, some bad truck drivers, horrendous car drivers, and some crazy pedestrians. What they're saying is, if you are the next step up from that, so if you're a cyclist, you've got to be careful of pedestrians. If you're cycling on a pavement, you've got to be careful.
Yeah.
If you're driving a car, you've got to be careful of cyclists and people.
Yeah.
It's really simple.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed there. You've got to be careful.
Yeah. So things, I'm sure we'll come on to it, but things like turning into junctions, people seem to have got in their head about these people that might be standing next to a junction ready to cross out.
That's the next one. People crossing the road at junctions.
What's it say, Mark?
I need to put my gig lamps on, don't I? When people are crossing or waiting to cross a junction, other traffic should give way.
Yeah.
That's easy, isn't it?
And to be fair, lots of people are making a song and dance about this, because is a pedestrian going to cross? Do pedestrians know what's in the highway code? Probably not if they're not a driver. We're always looking out for them, hence the fact that we've got a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit past schools, 30-mile-an-hour speed limit in built-up areas, because the predominant part of that is you're slowing the traffic down, so you've got more time to deal with hazards that might arise. So if we're thinking about when people are crossing or waiting to cross at a junction, other traffic should give way, it's a slightly different thing than we're used to now, because we would expect the pedestrian to wait for a gap. But now you're going to have people stopping at junctions to give way to those people. But that's looking after the lighter person. Light is right.
Okay, so let's go back to using a truck. If you're turning into a junction and there's a person stood on the corner waiting to cross that road you're turning on, as a truck driver, you're going to have to be really careful, because if you've got a trailer behind you, you don't want the trailer to mount the curb, which is a fail anyway if you're taking your test. However, you don't want to hurt them. You don't want to scare them if they're too close to the trailer. So there's nothing wrong with stopping and giving that person the option to step into the road and cross it. I don't see that as an issue.
I think the only issue is if people aren't aware of the changes and aware of why you in a car, bike or whatever is stopped at a junction waiting to turn right because there's a pedestrian crossing, it could cause those people behind to make an irrational decision of overtaking you, going round you, or potentially road rage because they're not understanding what you're doing.
You can't legislate for stupid.
Well, no,
they're the stupid people, you know, so that's not a problem as I see it. So if somebody's already stepped onto the road, you've got to let them cross, and that's not changed.
No.
You know, you're not going to push past them, are you? You just can't do that. This is where people are getting upset about cyclists, because the cyclists will go either front or behind, because that's just what some people do, which is, you know, it can't be enforced unless there's somebody actually there watching it. But generally, if somebody stepped onto a road, you're going to let them cross anyway, aren't you?
Yeah.
If you're a normal person.
So that brings us on to the third part. People driving, riding a motorcycle or cycling must give way to people on a zebra crossing and people walking and cycling on a parallel crossing. That's not any different than it is now, is it?
No, if somebody steps onto a zebra crossing, you have to stop.
Yeah.
It's quite simple.
And as a rider or a driver, you would be planning for that anyway.
You'd be anticipating it, wouldn't you?
In roadcraft, which is what Rossby use and the IM use their own version, but basically it's built around roadcraft, we plan for everything. And the biggest thing that we plan for is what we can least expect to happen. We're always planning for these sort of things. But people give away these big tips, don't they? If you're driving down the motorway and you see somebody's head in their car move that way, the car's going to follow, isn't it? If you see a pedestrian looking both ways, the chances are that they're looking to cross and they might well step out now. You should be planning for that. It's no different than it was. I think where people are getting so concerned is what's going to happen when somebody's waiting to let that pedestrian go across. Is that pedestrian going to cross? Oh no, they're not. Well, we just start moving again. But it slows the traffic down.
There's a choice been made. The person who decided, I don't need to cross, they may have stepped back or whatever, anything. But I heard a bizarre comment on the news today that somebody was saying, think about the traffic jams that are going to be caused when people are trying to cross the roads.
No, they don't happen now. And incidentally, today, Saturday, the day before you watch this, I've been out with an associate. We were going through Perranporth, waiting to turn right. Two people walk along the curb and actually wait for all the traffic, because if you think about it, even though I reckon light is right, as the highway code says, as a pedestrian, are you going to put yourself in harm's way?
They've got a responsibility as well, haven't they?
You can't just step out as a pedestrian and expect everybody to stop around you. Highway code is saying that you can, but you've got to look after everybody else on the road. So as a pedestrian, I'm not going to see your lorry coming down the road and think I'm just going to blindly walk out and expect 44 tons to stop and not knock me over. So I don't think an awful lot's going to change there.
Anyway, number 3, walking, cycling or riding in shared spaces. Now this is like, people are getting so upset by this, but let me think about this as a logical person. If I'm on the same path where pedestrians are allowed and cyclists are allowed, okay, and sometimes it's split in the UK with a lane for cyclists and a lane for people, I don't see a problem with that being on the same space.
Because
I don't see a problem of slowing down and being careful of the kid that might run out and things like that. It's not an issue for me. My God, they're complaining about it.
Because light is right. So if you're walking along as a pedestrian, as a cyclist coming along, you would expect the pedestrian to kind of move a little bit into their walkway and the cyclist to slow down and go around them.
It's not hard.
And that happens every day because inherently humans aren't nasty. We're nasty in boxes. We get out of these cars and you see all this stuff on crash cams and stuff, don't you? All this irate behaviour. But inherently humans are only putting that anger on the box, the car that they see. They're not doing it to a human being. They're just getting lost in the moment.
Yeah.
No human being, other than those evil people, are out to get anybody else. And if you're cycling along and you've got a pedestrian in the way, you're not going to cycle right into them and say it's your fault because you didn't get out of the way. You're just not going to do that.
Yeah. So number 4, positioning in the road when cycling. Now this is causing all sorts of issues.
This is causing lots of issues.
My word. So what they're saying now is, as a cyclist, you should cycle in the middle of your lane. And I agree with them.
Yeah.
And the reason I agree with them is if you're a cyclist and you're cycling in the UK on the left-hand side of the road, so you've got all the road furniture if you want, you've got grids, drains, manhole covers, okay, that you're bouncing over them, makes you unstable. But also, if you're cycling over on the left-hand side and I'm a car driver, that big gap of the rest of your lane says to me, I can get past there.
Yeah.
If I'm the Joe Public, bog standard, brain dead car driver, I've got to say it all right. So by cycling slightly wider of the road, and they say in the middle of the lane, but I think if you position yourself in, towards the centre part of the lane, that says 2 things. It says you're being safer by not hitting all the road furniture, but it also says to the car driver behind you, you've now got to think about overtaking me, because the space that they now say is if you're driving under 30 miles an hour and you're passing a cyclist, you have to give them 1.5 metres.
Under 30 miles an hour.
Under 30 miles an hour. If it's over 30 miles an hour that you're driving, you've got to give them 2 metres. The problem is for car drivers, now they're going, but that means I have to go onto the other side of the road. And I was listening on the radio last night and I was working, and they're saying, I now have to go on the other side of the road to get past a cyclist. And, there might be cars coming towards me. That tells me something. Yeah. You shouldn't be overtaking them there then. If there's a car coming towards you, why don't you just delay yourself? Like, it's going to cost you 15 seconds, 10 seconds till that car's gone past, then you can go past them safely. There's no problem.
No. And one big thing that we teach our associates, or people learning the advanced method of riding, is that imagine on a dual carriageway, you're riding along on your motorbike and you're riding in position 1, so you're left-hand side of the road in England, near to the curb. And you've got a car in front and a car behind. The car driver subconsciously really doesn't notice you because they're looking at the car in front, because they're in position 3 on the road, if you think about it. So what we do is we talk about positioning on the road for motorcyclists, and we position ourselves in front of that driver. Because that driver then subconsciously knows, whether he or she's taken into account there's a bike, there's an obstacle in front of them before the next car. And that's the same with the cyclist. So the cyclist riding in the middle of the lane, for all the reasons you said, 1, they're not wobbling into you as you've been invited to overtake them. You're not squeezing them into such a tiny safety bubble that now if something happens, the only place that they go is either under your wheels or off the curb and hurt themselves. Light is right. So they do occupy a space on the road. No matter how frustrating it gets for all of us with cyclists on the road, they do occupy a space. And fundamentally, they're human beings sat on a vehicle on a road.
So that's the issue I can't get my head around, because people are so upset by it.
But with them riding, like you said, in the centre of the road, they're there. Rather than trying to squeeze a car through and overtake them and almost knock them off, because that happens all the time, doesn't it?
I've been into hit and runs.
You weren't the one that hit and run, were you?
No, I was on the bike, I was on a push bike.
So what it does, like you said, is force those drivers to slow down, adds to speed calming, doesn't it? But it makes them think about what's happening and put a value on that person that's on the bike, and not say, not that aggression.
Yeah.
It takes that aggression away.
But the way people are speaking, they're saying, the cyclist isn't, in their heads they're going, the cyclist is in the middle of the road, he's not going to move. Well, any sane person is going to go, I've got a car behind me, I'm just going to pull in a little bit and let them get past me when it's safe to do so. And if it's not safe, if I stay in this position, they can't get past me, it's safer for me. I ain't got a problem with that.
No.
So also what they're saying as well, if cyclists are in riding two abreast like they want you to do, it makes more of a hazard for cars to get past. Now that's not a bad thing, making them a hazard. Okay, what it's actually doing is making the cars more responsible to get past them. And again, what they're saying is two cyclists cycling side by side, they've got vehicles behind them. Eventually, when it's safe to do so, they drop back into each other, make it a smaller target, the car can go past. It's not a problem. If you're cycling in a group of cyclists, the same thing happens. You can cycle two abreast in a group, and at a convenient point, you will get the people who be idiots and will stay out there because it's my right to do so. Like we have car drivers, it's my right to overtake you. Eventually they'll pull in and let you go past at a convenient, safe place to do so. I ain't got a problem with that.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about cyclists passing parked vehicles. There's a lot of accidents happen to cyclists passing parked vehicles. And the reason for that is because people in cars, in the UK, we don't teach people how to get out of a car, they just say get out of the car, and the amount of car doors that are opened into cyclists. So what they're saying is a cyclist should be a door's width away from the car. So when you're passing parked cars, a cyclist has to be a metre away from the car. And that's for his or her protection, because if somebody just opens a door, straight into the door, over the top, accident.
But that's no different than a car. Or a lorry, or a van, or anything. Because the only problem that brings in is in the mindset of people, they feel it's their right to park on the road if they've got no driveway. I'm the opposite to that. If you've got a car, you should have somewhere to put it. Mm-hmm. Our roads are just strewn with cars on both sides of the road. So if you imagine, some of those roads are now, rather than a two-lane carriageway, they're a one-lane carriageway because cars are all the way down the side, so it's impossible to be 1 metre away from all of them. So you just slow down.
Yeah, and look. Yeah. There's giveaways. Chances are if a car's got its wind mirrors folded in, you can see into the car. There's nobody in there, it's not going to move. So you can weigh it all up. But the other thing is what they're teaching. We might get onto it actually if we go a bit further. But what they're saying about people inside cars, we just open the car door. We might look in the mirror, but you just open the car door. In Holland, or the Netherlands, because Holland is a province of the Netherlands. Didn't know that, did you?
No.
There you go.
Every day's a learning day.
They teach that when you open the car door, so they get out on the left-hand side, their driver's side is on the left, as opposed to ours being on the right. You have to open the door with your right hand, so you're sat in that position. All right, in the UK, it'd be that position. That means you can look behind you easily and check what's behind you before you open the door. Now that's a law in the Netherlands, I believe, and we've just introduced that now in the UK. That's what they're teaching. Going to start teaching people now.
Oh, brilliant!
Really safe, really safe.
And all it means is you're just doing that, as opposed to just going get out. Oh no, this car's smashed up. So we're on to number 5 now. Overtaking. What's that say? No, go the other way.
Go the other way.
Overtaking when driving or cycling. Number 5.
Okay, so this concerns double white lines. In the UK, you can't overtake on double white lines unless it is a vehicle that's parked. You can go past it.
So you're overtaking a stationary vehicle.
Yeah, you can, which doesn't include traffic in a traffic jam, by the way.
No. Because they're not stationary.
However, if the vehicles are parked over to the left-hand side and you don't cross the white line, you can move up alongside them.
Yeah.
All right, so that's filtering.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that's winding people up is cyclists. Can I overtake a cyclist on a double white line?
If they're going more than 10 miles an hour, your answer's no.
Exactly, and they're riding in the centre of the lane, you cannot go past them. You're now breaking the law to do that, which is good.
And you always were, and this is the thing that I don't think people understand. The rules haven't changed in regards to white lines.
No, not at all.
They're the same. A cyclist is quite capable of doing 30 or 40 miles an hour down a hill. Easy. They're quite capable of doing 30 or 40 miles up a hill. Some of those cyclists are immense cyclists, but you still can't overtake them just because they're on bicycle because they're going more than 10 miles an hour. They're not stationary, and you haven't been instructed by a police officer to go across them. And you're not turning right.
So when you're passing, you can pass a cyclist or a horse, but you've got to give them plenty of room.
Yeah.
Now, these are the new rules, okay? And I'm looking at these here now, and it says, there is updated guidance on safe passing distances and speeds for people driving or riding a motorcycle when overtaking vulnerable road users. So this is specific to motorcycles. Leaving at least 1.5 metres when overtaking people cycling at speeds of up to 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Okay, and giving them more space when overtaking at higher speeds. So, as a motorcyclist, you can go past a bicycle up to 30 miles an hour, and if it's going faster, you've got to give it more space. So 1.5 metres, which is fine, because a bike can do that inside that.
Yeah.
A car can't.
Yeah.
So the car has to obey the rules of.
And you think about it, a bicycle doing 30 miles an hour on an open road gets overtaken by a car, van, lorry doing 60 miles an hour. What comes with that when you overtake?
Backwash.
The
wind.
Yeah, the displacement of the air that they're pushing. And what happens to the cyclist?
Yeah.
That's why. And it's no different than now.
So you're always taught that if you get in any kind of vehicle, when you overtake a cyclist or a vulnerable road user, you've got to be careful. If the wind is coming from the side and once you've gone past them, that wind might knock them off. You always have to check to make sure they're still there when you've gone past them. And obviously, if they're falling off, you can run back and rob the pockets, can't you? No, we don't do that now, do we? Okay, so
passing people riding horses or driving horse-drawn vehicles at speeds under 10 miles an hour, they must allow at least 2 metres, 6.5 feet of space. Same principle, but you've got an unpredictable animal that again is holding a human being.
So what you got to think about, if you're on a double white line scenario and you've got a horse going down, okay, you've got to give 2 metres. The double white lines are there for a reason, because it's a dangerous overtaking area. So you've got to give 2 metres to go past them. I would say that one of two things will happen. If you can see the road straight ahead for a good distance, you can clearly see there's nothing coming towards you, because what you don't want to do is go past, because you can only go past a horse slowly and pull in. You don't want something coming towards you. Or hopefully the horse rider would move over to the side to give you more space.
Yeah.
That's just being courteous, isn't it?
Light is right.
Light is right, there you go. So, and the rules say if you can't do that, you've got to wait behind them until it's safe to do so.
Yeah. Number 6, cycling at junctions. The code's been updated to clarify that when turning into or out of a side road, people cycling should give way to people walking who are crossing or waiting to cross. Isn't that exactly the same as the first one, where cars are? Light is right, so a bicycle can hurt a person that's walking.
Yep.
Some junctions now include small cycle traffic lights at eye level height, which may allow cyclists to move separately from or before other traffic. People cycling are encouraged to use these facilities where they make their journey safer and easier. There is also new guidance for people cycling at junctions with no separate facilities. So the code recommends that people cycling should proceed as if they were driving a vehicle. There's a surprise. Where there are no separate cycling facilities. This includes positioning themselves in the centre of the chosen lanes for all the benefits that we've just talked about, where they feel able to do this safely. And that's to make sure that they're as visible as possible, hence the fact that we talked about that, and to avoid being overtaken, because that then creates a risk to the person that's crossing the road as well.
Yeah.
Light is right. You're heavier. Look after somebody that's on a lighter vehicle.
So we also talk about people cycling turning right. The code now includes advice for people cycling into using junctions where signs and markings tell them to turn right in 2 stages. These are stage 1, where the traffic lights turn green, go straight ahead to the location marked by a cycle symbol and turn arrow on the road, and then stop and wait. And stage 2 is when the traffic lights on the far side of the junction, now facing the people cycling, turn green, complete the manoeuvre. So basically all they're saying is you can move out, but you haven't got the right to pull in front of cars. You've got to wait until there's a gap to do that. That's common sense, isn't it?
And that's exactly how the road works now, isn't it?
Yeah, because if you pull in front of a car now and he hits you, and they goes to the insurance or the police will turn up and say, well, why'd you pull in front of a car? It's my right to do so. Well, you muppet, This is telling you.
Yeah, and there's also dangerous riding, dangerous driving,
Yeah.
all the inconsiderate driving, that sort of stuff. Like it says there, people cycling are asked to watch out for people driving, intending to turn across their path, as people driving ahead might not be able to see them. More of an emphasis on light is right, those people having a responsibility to the other road users to make themselves seen.
So the whole point is for people to accept that they are responsible. They can't just do what they want to do and expect that someone's going to look after them. Maybe there's a point here. We've got all these cars now that have got airbags, roll bar, crash bar, crumple zones, and all the rest of it. And we're now walking away from car accidents that 30 years ago we wouldn't have walked away from. So people have become really safe, feel very safe in their cars. Perhaps we should just get rid of all that. Just have a big spike in the middle of the steering wheel.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we're just too safe, aren't we?
Yeah.
Number 7 already, look.
People cycling, riding a horse, and driving horse-drawn vehicles on roundabouts. That's number 7 in this thing. So basically what's happened now is they haven't changed it, they've just emphasised that people are vulnerable road users, so we're saying horses, bikes and horse-drawn carriages, that sort of stuff, now have priority on a roundabout. So you can't zip round them just because you can. If they're in the same lane as you, you're going to stay behind them and follow them and then try to make an overtake when it's safe to do so. You can't bully their way through and push them. I know it's going to happen, but you can't do that. And it just makes the roundabout safer, because roundabouts for a cyclist are horrific.
Yeah.
They're bad for a truck driver because everyone's trying to get past you, and you're driving a 40...
Watch out for further future videos on that.
You're driving a 40-foot trailer and it doesn't follow the cab, it crabs across it. So you squash somebody against the side of
Yeah.
Just be careful, that's all they're saying.
Yeah. Allow people cycling to move across their path as they travel around the roundabout. Because it's interesting, I had a discussion with somebody today saying that they understood it that cyclists and more vulnerable road users have to stay on the outside of a roundabout even if they're turning right. But there's nothing on there to say that they have to use that. As far as I'm aware, reading through this, they have to follow the same rules of the road as everybody else. So if they're turning right, they would be using the right-hand lane. But what it does do for me is emphasise that you, for example, picture in your mind you have a cyclist on the roundabout turning right on the inside lane. You've got a car behind them, or a motorbike behind them, a car behind them, and a van or a lorry behind them. The lorry should be looking out for what the van's doing because they're more vulnerable. The van should be looking out for the car because they're more vulnerable. The car should be looking out for the motorcyclist because they're more vulnerable. And the motorcyclist should be looking out for the cyclist who is more vulnerable. So if we all did that and just took a little bit more care and time on the roundabout, cyclists would make their way around and off at the right place, providing they indicate and let us know what's happening. Cyclist is kind of shielding the rest of the horrible ninjas out to get them behind. The car is doing the same with the van and the lorry, and everybody's just looking after each other. In practice, like you say, we're still going to get people that break the highway code, break road traffic legislation because they're impatient and they don't see the value of the person on the bike or the motorbike or in the car or on the bicycle because they don't view them as people.
No.
And that's what this is all about, isn't it? It's making people understand that somebody, human being, is using that vehicle and we should look out for them.
What it's also saying is it's highlighting that if you are a bigger vehicle and you hit a smaller vehicle, okay, they're going to look to see whose fault it is. Okay, and you can't say, well, he just stepped out into the road. It's a pedestrian hitting because he just stepped out into the road. What they're going to say there is, before they stepped out into the road, you should have slowed down enough to give them the option to step out or stop. But you didn't do that, and that's why you hit them.
Yeah.
In its broadest terms. Okay, so number 8, we're at 8 already.
This is the last one, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Go up again. Parking, charging, and leaving vehicles.
I don't think man's leaving a vehicle and just walking away from it. Just talking
Leave
about
it
what
roll.
we just spoke about.
Oh yeah, so the code recommends, and we're reading this out from the government site again, the code recommends a new technique when leaving vehicles, sometimes called the Dutch reach.
There you go!
Look at that! Where people driving or passengers in a vehicle are able to do so, they should open the door using the hand on the opposite side to the door they are opening. For example, using their left hand to open open a door on their right-hand side.
So what they're saying
we get
now-
out this side, rather than doing that and opening the door, I would do that because it makes your whole body move. And as we tell our associates, you use your head to look. You use your head to look because your peripheral vision moves. So you're turning your whole body around and looking. You haven't got to do anything extra.
So what they're saying is, if you open the car, everybody opens a car door this way now. I'm 100% sure of that. You pull a little lever, you use your elbow, and you push the door open. There's no control. That's why the wind catches it and whips it off, breaks your hinges. Okay, what they're saying now is, you get hold of the lever, however that might be. This hand is on the door, so when you open it, you can control the door while looking back. So you don't lose the door to the wind. The cyclist that's coming past, you're checking, and that's a good thing. Why is that? Why people complaining about that?
Because they don't do it.
But it's an education thing. So from now on, if they're going to start teaching kids who are going through for their tests from now on, you know, in 30 years' time, everybody will be doing it and not thinking about it. It's the old fuddy-duddies, you know, who've been driving a long time. Oh, you know, it's against my human rights or something.
Right, we got use an electric charging point here. So I'm new to this completely. So it says for the first time the code includes guidance about using electric vehicle charging points. When you're using one, people should. So this is a you really must do it because you
I
should.
can't believe they've actually put this in, because it just makes you're like, where's common sense gone? God.
But what they're saying is people should park close to the charge point. I think that's quite obvious, but probably not. And avoid creating a trip hazard for people walking on the trailing cables. Because where there's a blame, there's a claim. You can guarantee that somebody will fall over. So they're putting a responsibility on the people that are charging their vehicles to make sure that those cables are well seen, they're not hidden, and people can't trip over them.
As an example, I drove past a place yesterday and they had a charging cable coming out of a window down onto the path, and they'd actually put something over the cable going to the car. You know, other people will have it coming straight across, so you garrot the 6-year-old kid that's coming through on his funny push bike, you know, or an adult that's walking, you know, riding a bike, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's common sense. But my God, if they've had to make it a law.
And then they've said display a warning sign if you can. Quite obvious, isn't it? You know, I'm cleaning here. This floor is slippery. It begs belief that we have to tell people. Do you know? Years ago, they used to provide manuals in your book of how to take things apart in your car. Now, in the manual, it says do not drink the battery acid. You know, does that not show where society has gone? Never before have we had so much access to information at our fingertips 24 hours a day on whatever subject you want, and yet the majority of society, and I include myself in that, have to be told the basics. Don't drink battery acid. Well, I wouldn't drink it anyway, but purely somebody has. Same as display a sign if you can that you've got a trailing cable. It's quite common sense, isn't it? And then they go on to return the charging cable and connectors neatly to minimise the dangers to other people and avoid creating an obstacle for other road users. All of this is
Excuse me.
All of this is about treating other people really well and before yourself, isn't it?
And it's causing such an argument or a debate in the UK at the moment. Where, my God, it's bizarre. There are a few issues though, because this is my well-thumbed version of a highway code. The new one with all these changes isn't yet available.
Not until April 22, apparently, from the government site. However, you can pre-order an updated version of the highway code online now, and like we've done, you can look through the changes, because I think it's really important to look from the horse's mouth, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Look on the website of the government that are making the changes, so you can read and assess and make your own mind up and decide how that affects you as a road user, not social media, because Karen from God knows where is an expert on this now. She was the second that this highway code thing was mentioned, but an awful lot of Karen's stuff is wrong, isn't it?
Yeah. And also, I think the government have missed a thing, but I don't want to get political again, but you know, they haven't started pushing this only the last few days, but the changes came in today, the 29th of January. You know, there should have been a campaign leading
Yeah.
up to it. You remember the clunk click adverts about making people wear seatbelts, and it went on forever and ever and ever.
When I was a kid, we used to have adverts about people going on a dinghy and fishing right next to an electric pylon, but they used to make lots and lots of public safety videos, and like you, I think they've missed a trick by not publicising the right information at the right time to everybody.
Apparently it starts next week, but it's already in force now, so anyway, there you go. So that's 8 things you should know about the new changes to the highway code.
But I think summing up, if you remember
summary,
if you remember light is right, or more vulnerable needs more protection, which is quite obvious, then I don't think you can go far wrong with any of these changes. There might be some issues where you're waiting to turn right, somebody hasn't seen why you're doing it, getting frustrated, but that's for them to deal with, not for you.
We're talking about a delay of seconds, not a delay of hours.
Yeah.
Let's be reasonable about it.
Seconds is immense. I've shut roads because as part of the job that I do in the past, and some people are really quite aggressive, and yet somebody's lying fighting for their life in the middle of the road, but their life's been disrupted by a couple of minutes. So we're always going to have that. But I think there are some things in here that perhaps don't need to be said, like training cables from charging points in case somebody trips. I think the onus should be on where you're walking. Look where you're walking, not you can claim if you trip over.
Hang on a minute, I want to be doing that when I'm walking.
But for me, all of these changes on the highway code really don't affect what we do in ROSPA or what advanced riders or what any rider, driver, pedestrian does now, because we should be looking out for the more vulnerable people and putting a bit more of that courteous road use into practice and looking after somebody that's a little bit more vulnerable.
Now, back to my highway code. If you like this video,
I'm sure we'll get loads of comments down below, but have a read for yourself. We'll put all the description or the link to the website that we've used in the description. Have a look for yourself. Make your own mind up about what it means to you.
we don't plan to be contentious, but people are going to make comments,
Yeah.
We can't help that, but we just want you to be safe on the road.
Yeah. Be safe, look out for others, and make sure that they're safe as well. Thumbs up if you like the video. It really does help because it shows other people that we've done a video and it's there. Subscribe, hit the bell so you see when we've done another video. Have a look at our website because you too could be drinking out of a glorious cup. Hang on, coffee break. There's nothing like proper coffee out of a decent cup, is there?
Is that proper coffee? I've got my thumb up here.
See you in the next one.